Here's something we're thinking about. If inflation's cooling, why does your grocery cart feel heavier and your wallet feel lighter every single week? So here's the part that most people are missing, and it isn't cool. It's actually re-accelerating. So when prices speed up after years of already being high, that's not a blip. That's a slow motion squeeze on your entire life. So let's call it what it is. The cost of being okay is starting to outrun the paycheck of being quote unquote middle class worker. So 86% of Americans say that they're stressed about grocery prices. That's not anxiety, that's actual math. And when the folks who did everything right, went to school, got a good job, saved for retirement, doing all those things, still can't get ahead, you know something is starting to crack within the system itself. And so in this video here, I'm gonna break down a couple things worth mentioning. And first, why the latest inflation shock from this past week matters more than the headlines suggest, and why the official number often misleads you based upon what you're really experiencing in the real world. And then second, how the essentials such as power, food, and health insurance are all morphed into what we consider luxuries and what that does to an already outstretched budget. And then last, the ripple effects. You got debt, foreclosures, and a brutal job hunt, and how to think about the survival moves for the next wave of events unfortunately hits. And this, my friends, is something worth touching on. Okay, so I wanted to take a minute and share my thoughts in reference to just this recent activity from this week and all the indicators that really point to we're still heading into that event, which is going to be considered something that we're unfortunately going to be able to look back and say was right in front of us all along. So in this video here, I want to share my thoughts on a variety of subject matter relevant to the fake narrative that we're getting from the mainstream economy, that everything is fine, and that once the Federal Reserve cuts in September, we're off to the races, because that, my friend, is a part of the delusion. But as always, if you guys want to hear more of these so quick takes, definitely drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And more importantly, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you share this so more people can turn up perspective on what's really happening. So let's start with the spark that lit the fuse this past week. So the producer price index, the pipeline for prices before they actually hit your pocket, jumped 0.9% in a single month. So that's the biggest jump since June of 2022. So if you strip out food and energy, you still got 0.9%. And that's not a little bit of noise, that's actual acceleration. So if a move like that repeated each month for a year, you're starting to see a roughly an 11% annualized pace. And that, my friends, is nothing to joke about. So think about what this means. So if your budget is a bathtub, the faucet just turned up while the drain, which is your paycheck, barely even widened. So you don't notice a flood all at once. You notice the water line creeping up slowly, inch by inch. Your socks are all soaked. And here's the blind spot. Official statistics are designed to be tidy, and sometimes tidy leaves you out the messy with everyday pain. So you got substitutions, hedonic adjustments, and revisions constantly, all the sausage making that keeps your numbers respectable, while your checkout total tells a whole different story. So you don't need a spreadsheet to know what your living costs actually are. You just need to look at the receipts. So now you got essentials, which are the things you can't opt out of, such as electricity, for instance. Residents were just hit with double-digit hikes. So from 17% to 20% in one single shot. So that's not just a bigger bill, that's a choice you now have to make. Run the AC during the heat wave or save the money for groceries. And then you got air conditioning. It's become a luxury now that you have to justify yourself just like a vacation. It's not surprising that food tells the same story. So you got beef prices at all-time highs, with the beef and veal index double-digit gains year over year. So ground beef is up, steaks are up. You can feel it in the meat aisle when you walk down the store sometimes. You're scared to look at the prices. So that's called sticker shock, that borderline on insulting you sometimes. Then you got $45 for a package of beef. That used to be a casual token in the cart. It's not even considered splurging anymore. It's asking permission to eat what your family already has. So if your dinner is meat and potatoes, you're suddenly priced like you're dining out all of a sudden. And then you got healthcare, the third leg of the essential stool. So it's bracing for another jolt itself. So analysis of marketplace filings show proposed premium hikes. So many in the high teens, some over 20%. So to translate that, you're going to pay a lot more to not be bankrupt by a single hospital visit. So picture your budget and the fallout, it's everywhere. Because when essentials jump, everything else breaks. So parents are going into debt to send their kids to summer camp or cover childcare. So that's 62% according to one survey, or nearly $900 per child across a few months. And that's not a fancy enrichment program, that's just a basic bridge so you can keep working. It's the definition of catch-22. You pay to work or don't work, but yet you fall behind anyway. And of course, housing isn't immune from this either. So in places like Clark County, Nevada, foreclosure activity is ticking up. So you got defaults, activity is ticking up, default notices rising, homeowners are slipping behind. That's not stress moves from the checkout lane to the mailbox to the front door. So basically, if you miss a payment here or juggle a bill there, and suddenly you're negotiating with the bank about the roof over your head. So it's 2008 in slow motion, not a cliff, but a staircase where each a little lower than the last. And then there's a job market. So you got a paradox that looks strong on paper, but feels like quicksand to anyone actually applying. So imagine sending out hundreds of applications and getting a handful of interviews. You're told that there's plenty of openings, but it's like trying to play catch at a bus that keeps changing routes. The likelihood of you getting on it is very slim. So if you still have a seat, you're even grateful just to be in there. And if you don't, you're told to hustle harder or go back to school to probably get your master's or your PhD. And so let's stitch these trends together here. Prices at the producer level jump. That feeds into the cost of the basics such as power, food, and health. That then squeezes your discretionary spending, the little pleasures that make life feel livable. And then you happen to cut back. And then business start to feel it. Hiring stall, debt rises, defaults creep in. Politicians point at charts all day long, and you basically point at your bank account. So this middle class becomes less of a group and more nostalgia. Something people talk about like a high school team that used to win championships. And so here's the part no one says out loud. A slow grind is more dangerous than a sudden crash. So crashes wake people up. Grinds lull you to adapt in even worse and worse conditions. It's the boiling frog cliche, but it's also the leaky tire as well. So you don't notice the puncture hole in the tire. You just feel it when the car starts drifting to one of the sides as you move down the road. So the longer we normalize it, everything costs more, but it's still fine, the deeper the rut goes. So the question is, what do you do when the system behaves like this? You get uncomfortably practical. You treat cash like oxygen. You build an emergency buffer, even if it's small, because one unexpected expense without a cushion becomes a spiral. So you negotiate wherever you can, whether it be on insurance, utilities, subscriptions. If it's not necessary, you got to cut it because 5 little wins beat one theoretical big one. You diversify your income streams. That is a must. That's why I always talk about having as many irons in the fire as you can, because you never know when you're going to need one of them irons. And it's not because side gigs are a dream, but because redundancy is how you survive volatility and all your receipts, literally and mentally, so you aren't gaslit by tidy narratives that don't match your actual lifestyle. But there's a bigger point here. We were told the storm has already passed. Jerome Powell said inflation was transitory and that it's going to be under control and that we can expect a soft landing. But we haven't landed. We know it's not transitory. And now everyone's waiting on a rate cut. And the reality is we're still here. Energy is ticking up, food reaching record highs, premiums preparing to climb, foreclosure flashing yellow, and the job hunt turned into a lottery. It's not about panic. It's about when the scoreboard doesn't match the field, you stop trusting the scoreboard. So if you're still hanging on to your seat in the middle class, or AKA the working class, you got to hold it with both hands. Not out of fear, but out of awareness. So the game keeps moving chairs and the music is unpredictable. Your advantage is preparation in a time when preparation feels optional, because it isn't. So I'll leave you with this. Inflation isn't just a number. It's a story about power. Who has the leverage to raise prices? Who has to swallow them? Who gets to be grateful either way? We can't fix everything in one single day, but we can stop pretending it's a statistical illusion. It is real, and it's here, and it's accelerating. And this, my friends, is something I definitely wanted to get to you guys, just because don't believe the hype. Don't expect an interest rate cut in September, which is not going to happen, to make things better, because the average person don't hold any tangible assets. It's going to actually benefit them in the long run from the possibility of a melt up in the stock market. And so ultimately, if you know this, the goal is to take advantage of opportunities in front of you right now. And that's, of course, to continue to get your weight up, save when you can, cut what you don't need, and find ways to get involved in other people's lives in a beneficial way so that you'll always be able to be a blessing and, of course, get blessed down the line because you develop a generous nature of loving to be a blessing to other people. But other than that, my friends, this is just something I want to share with you. Curious to hear what you guys think. If you find value, hit that thumbs up. Drop a comment. Definitely would love to have you add to this narrative here. And then take this and share it so other people get an interesting take on what's really happening. And I'll catch you guys later.